Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 19, 2021 meeting of the Newtown Township Trails and Greenways Committee. I'd like to remind folks that we are being recorded. Secretary Cook, could you please call the roll?
Chairman John Custer.
Here.
Vice Chair Anthony DiVincenzo. Aaron Cook, present. Amy Blagriff.
Present.
Bethany Gingisa. Here. Celia Archer. Joseph Falcon.
Present.
Terry McCarthy.
Here.
Also present are Township Manager Neese and Director Sharretts. May we have a moment of silence? Please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One of my goals tonight is to finish up in 2 hours. We ran a little bit late last time, and I think we owe it to everybody to allow folks to get home on time. So I'm requesting that we keep comments to under 3 minutes if possible, so we can get things done quickly. Next item on the agenda is public comment for agenda items only. I don't see any public comment because there's no public. Next item is the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written or consideration of any changes. May I have a motion?
I move. Second.
Is there a second? A motion by Member McCarthy and second by Member Blagriff. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none.
If I can, I just make note that Dr. Archer just joined by way of Zoom. So when she's voting, I want to make sure she can hear us. If we can take just a moment to make sure she hears, and also that we can hear her. Okay. Dr. Archer, if I can have you unmute, make sure that you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. I've heard no discussion from the board. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Next on the agenda are the minutes of the September 21 meeting. Can we have a motion for approval or consideration of changes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
I second Delia Archer.
Motion made by Member McCarthy, second by Member Archer. Is there any further discussion by the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. Next on the agenda is a presentation by Rich Kerr. I've known Rich for a number of years. I know how instrumental he has been in forming Friends of Haverford Trails and the Trail Summit. I know that Haverford has become the gold standard for connection between outside groups in the township in the Walkie Trail area. So I'd like to present Rich Kerr.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? All right, I'm Rich Kerr. I'm with the Friends of Haverford Trails. Some background, I've had a career in public transportation. I have a master's degree in civil engineering, in transportation engineering. And when I retired, I took on trails in my hometown and improving biking and walking conditions. And I've been doing it for 10 years now. So what I'd like to give you is the context. I know you're a new group. In your first meeting, one of your board members gave you your legal lowdown for being township officials, per se. And your second meeting, you looked at your own trail opportunities. I'd like to give you some outside context and some of the wisdom I hope that I've learned over 10 years of trying. I would hope you keep this, if it's not in your package, that you get it and refer to it later, maybe when you've learned some of the same lessons and say, oh, now I know what he was talking about. So let's talk about this. The Friends of Haverford Trails, thanks, is a volunteer group. It was formed 10 years ago, last month. It's a task force of something we were blessed with in Haverford Township, a civic council, which is an umbrella nonprofit that all their nonprofits belong to. Fire companies, libraries, historical societies, civics, things like that. As a result, we became a task force of that group and had immediate 501c3 and tax deductible status. We promote walking and bicycling improvements as well as trails per se. And we chose the word trails with an S in it because we didn't want to be limited to just one trail. Whatever opportunities came up, we wanted to be able to cover them all. We generate a lot of support and awareness. You can see the bullet list of what we do. Table events, a free bike corral parking service at township events, newsletters, hikes, walks and rides, work days, a website. We have a Facebook page, and we have a lot of partnerships with other organizations. Our biggest partnership has been with the township. We've had a very willing township, former director of Parks and Rec and assistant township manager, Tim Denny, who welcomed outside help as long as he could control it, and he was comfortable with what it was doing. And you can't work well just as a township, and I don't think you can work well just as a volunteer organization. It really takes the two working together. So the next slide shows you visually some of the things we've done. That's Tim in the middle with the red hat. It's not the red hat you might think it might be these days, but that was our first event 10 years ago, our first table at Haverford Township Day. You see one of our emailers, as we call them, in the yellow. You see our bike corral free parking in the upper right at a township event, and a volunteer group helping us with trail development. That's the St. Joseph's Prep ice hockey team. They train in our stadium in Haverford, and each of the boys on there has to put in a certain number of hours of community service. So the leaders had them do 3 different days of trail work with us. Okay, you have an organization that covers Marple Newtown in the Friends of Marple Newtown Trails. I help it with webpage support on our website. A little more about that in a minute. They have a Facebook page as well. And it's basically been gathering some support and waiting for things to happen. And now this committee is here. So they already have a way to get the word out. They have followers. They could do volunteer work if that was made possible. They could become a nonprofit if they want to be. And you could also think about separating Marple and Newtown or keeping them together as they are now. Our website's called havetrail.com. I didn't expect it to grow beyond Haverford, but it has. So it's havetrail.com. And basically, we learned that there was no information for people. We had wooded areas that looked undeveloped and dense and marked no hunting, no dumping, no trespassing. And I asked Tim Denny why it was no trespassing. And he said, sure, you can walk there. It's just the only signs we could find in the municipal catalog said no trespassing, as well as no hunting and no dumping. So that was something that we learned just by having a map and putting a line on it saying it's okay, you can walk there. People started walking there. It's that simple. So the website was a big part of that. People also want to know what they're getting into when they go out on a trail they've never been on before. So we try to describe them and give them some information ahead of time. In 2015, we expanded the website to support trail groups forming in Upper Darby and here in Marple Newtown. In 2020, we expanded it again at one of our summits. People expressed, especially with COVID coming on, that it would be great if there was an opportunity for a regional information base on trails, that people could find out about trails. And I realized that could be done with very little work. So we've expanded the website to become a multi-municipal resource for Eastern Delaware County. We include Lower Marion because it's actually more connected to Delaware County than it is to its own county geographically. I've carefully walked and geocoded most of the trails and put them onto Google Maps, which is a real learning process, I can tell you that. And they change the rules all the time. We create overlay files that include pop-up brief descriptions, links, and photos. And we also have plans to relevant links and studies. So your township's plans and comprehensive plan are on there. So people can see what has Newtown been thinking of. The next slide, again, visually shows what I'm talking about. The yellow page on the left is our main web page. I encourage you to go to it and explore around. Just keep clicking and you'll find all kinds of things. The first main box that you can click on and the description below it are for the Western Trails overview. That's a map of all of Eastern and Central Delaware County plus Lower Marion, and all the trails are listed there. Each other box represents a certain township area, and those maps are more specific, and they show whether the bike trail is bikeable or not. It gives information on the length, where the BART trailheads are, the places you can get on the trail, because you can't get on every trail anywhere. You have to know where to get on, and where parking is available, whether it's street parking or lot parking, and information like that. So if you click on Marple Newtown in the bottom right here, you come to the next page, which is in the middle. And there's the Friends of Marple Newtown logo and information on trails in Marple and Newtown, on bicycling in Marple and Newtown, and plans and studies. If you click on trails in Newtown Township, you get the page on the right, which I made very small so I could show you what it scrolls down to include. It includes the interactive map. It includes some background information, and it includes a picture, in this case, the new entrance to the Listener Trail. And it also shows a brief description of each trail. I've learned some people are very graphically oriented in the way they take in information. Other people want it written out in sentences, and you do both and accommodate everyone. So that's that. I welcome you to click around. If you clicked on that map, and there's a upper right, Google Maps has a little thing I call the 4 squares symbol. It looks like this. You click on that, it makes it full screen. And that's what you see on the next slide here. Is the full screen and blown up a little bit. With these maps, you can zoom in, zoom out. You can click on any trail to see what it's about. The information pops up on the left. If there are pictures, they pop up. This is the Listener Trail, and it has 2 photographs, one when it was brand new, and I first walked it, and the other more recent. And it shows you the information and gives a link back to Friends of Marple Newtown Trails, just in case someone comes across this map in some other way. So there you see it. The bikeable trails have bike symbols on them. The Goshen Trail is now bikeable, so I recently changed that. I was surprised to see the sign had changed. The next slide shows our annual Trail Summit. Year 1 of this summit in 2013 was basically saying, we're trying to have trails in Haverford Township. Anybody interested? And it's grown and grown and grown, because the next year there were people from other townships saying, why can't we have something like this? And it now includes the whole area. John has been to several, Bruce Killen has been to several, others on your EAC, and done presentations. And we have on our website, I think 5 years of the past presentations. All the PowerPoints are there. In one case, we have videos of the presentation, so you hear the words that went with the PowerPoint. I'd like to talk a little about trail hierarchy in our region. The top level is the circuit trails. You may have heard of it or maybe not. The circuit trails is a now 800-mile multi-use trail network plan for the greater Philadelphia region, including South Jersey. It has one trail that comes into Newtown. It's the Newtown Square Branch Trail. And I know you have the, hoping to get the feasibility study underway. That would be your top tier trail. In Haverford, we have 3. Basically, a lot of these are rail lines that are abandoned or creek edges. And that's the case in ours as well. Beneath that, I'll call it the interstate level of trails, and multi-use means at least 10 feet wide, paved with macadam. And eventually, all the little pieces getting built will hopefully be interlinked to create a network. And you'll be able to ride into Philadelphia or up to Valley Forge State Park or someplace like that if you want to. Beneath that, Delaware County then created a Delaware County Primary Trail Network, which is their vision in general terms for a smaller network of trails that crisscross Delaware County and exist at the next level down. And that adds the Route 252 bicycle route north from the Newtown Square Branch here in this township. And then there are additional trails. There are trails that you do as a township, trails that are informal, trails that Boy Scouts create, all kinds of different trails. So that's the context that you're working within. I used to deal a lot in my job with municipalities, in my case in New Jersey, and I went to literally over 100 of them. They all have a map on the wall that shows the township, and it's surrounded by empty white space. And I call it the island map. You're really not an island, and there are things you can connect to, and people you can learn from, and people you can copy practices of. So I encourage that. The next part of my presentation I call quotes I live by. The first one is do what you can, where you can, when you can. And that came from our Director of Parks and Recreation, Tim Denny, who believed in that. If you have the chance to do something tomorrow, even if it's not the complete picture and we don't have everything fully planned to the last nut and bolt, do that one thing you can do tomorrow. In response to people telling him it doesn't connect to anything, he said, someday it will. You have to start somewhere, and then things will connect. The other thing we've learned is if you put in a simple walking trail, even just clearing a path through the woods and marking it with down sticks along the edge, people start walking, people get more interested in trails, your committee will get more support for trails. Just something as simple as that. The other thing he would say is someday other things will connect to it. In other words, you have to start somewhere. The second quote I live by, I have to confess, is my own. And that is, a little foot trail might grow into a big trail. And we cleared some trails with volunteer labor, simply like you see here, a path in the woods marked by fallen branches along the edge. And people started using them. And people were like, well, this is supposed to someday be a circuit trail, 10 feet wide, paved, bicyclists and everything else. And I have said, well, some trails might grow into big trails, but you start them all and they go where they will. Now you'll notice on this trail, if you look closely, in the woods, we just have to clear a trail and delineate it. In open meadows, we learned we put down wood chips to make it look like a trail. And our township, and maybe yours, has a pile of wood chips that they accumulate that they're looking to put somewhere. And if they put them down carefully, volunteers with nothing more than rakes and shovels and a wheelbarrow or two can spread wood chips and make a trail that looks like a trail so people know they're allowed to walk there. This trail no longer needs maintenance because it's worn out continually by people walking on it. You can see the dirt line through the woods there. And the magnolia tree, by the way, which happened to be buried back there in the woods and nobody knew. The next slide shows the development of a trail. And this is what we call the Pensie Trail, which is part of the Newtown Square Branch rail line that came up here and crossed just to the west side of 252. On the left, when the township said you could clear that if you want, it turned out to be sticker bushes and interconnected vines and all kinds of junk up over our heads. And my co-chair actually bought a machete to deal with this. We found a ski when we were back in there at first, and he started swinging the ski around like a madman to chop down these vines. Our goal was to simply cut a shoulder-wide path through the jungle to see what was down there. And then we thought we could widen it out later on. And what you see then in the top center is one of our volunteer groups. And these groups, we did not have to go after. They came to us looking for things to do. This is the YMCA employees. The Haverford Y went in, and this trail, everybody wanted it to be in place as a walking trail because the Y is at the end of it. It literally ends at the back of the Y parking lot. So when the Y opened, the trail was there. Pictured below that in the center with the red shirts, that's the Keller Williams real estate people. They have a red shirt day of service nationwide. And we had 40 people out there putting wood chips down on that trail, with the township bringing dump trucks and putting out small piles every 15 feet or so for them to spread. And finally, we got a grant, the township did, to pave it and make it the circuit trail it was intended to be. And on the right, you see the dedication for that. So over the course of 2011 to 2016, that was our progression on that trail. It runs right through the heart of our township, behind people's backyards, has a lot of activity because it goes right up to the middle school, connects several parks, goes to the Y, goes to the municipal building. And the next step on that one, believe it or not, is an over $1 million project to put a bridge back across Manoa Road, where the railroad once had one, to extend that trail. And we expect that to happen by the end of next year. It's been COVID delayed and PennDOT delayed, frankly. Quote number 3 is from Bob Thomas, who's an Eastern trail consultant here in Pennsylvania and a real guru when it comes to trails. He's done this professionally and as a love all his life. And his quote is, there are 3 essential qualities to a good trail. It must be continuous, it must be complete, and it must be delightful. And we have some trails around in our area, in this region, that meet the first 2, but don't meet the third. And if you don't meet the third, you'll have a great trail and very few users on it. It has to be something people want to walk, or it has to serve a real purpose for longer haul runners or bicyclists to meet their needs. The next slide shows some, I think, delightful trails. The one in the lower left is the Keneally Trail through Keneally Park in Lower Marion. And the one on the right is our paved section of the Darby Creek Trail, which was the first trail the township got a grant for. And it literally is on the bank of Darby Creek and is a terrific, terrific walk. What you don't know, unless you go in the dead of winter when the brush is down and look very carefully, is this used to be the dumping site for everybody in the township. There is a landfill that is a hillside coming down. The park that it goes to used to be a sewage treatment plant. The school bus yard is up at the upper end of it. And up there also was the smokestack for the incinerator. This area has changed dramatically. And now it's a real treasure. And people come from all around to use that trail. So it needs to be delightful. Next slide. Trail types and usage. Let me just discuss this briefly. I learned that while bicyclists have a strong and vocal advocacy, most trail users in our area are pedestrians and runners. While large multi-use trails get most of the attention, the great majority of trails in our region are simple earthen walking trails through woods and fields and along streams. In Haverford Township, we have 2 paved segments, each under a mile or just under, and that's out of 17 miles of trails in the township. We have the Haverford College Nature Walk, which is a variety of textures on the surface, but limited to walkers and runners. We actually have a trail counter, and you'll see a picture of that in the next slide, but the trail counter is put in by the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. You could go back if you would. And we have real data. And the real data on the Darby Creek Trail shows that 91% of the users on that trail are pedestrians and 9% are cyclists. There's also one on the Kinwood Heritage Trail in Lower Marion. 73% is pedestrian, 27 bicyclist. And that's even with that trail connecting to the big concrete arch bridge that goes across the Schuylkill River and the Schuylkill Expressway to Manayunk. Even with that connectivity, they're only seeing 27% cyclists at this point. Now the next slide. This is a trail data, actual trail data for the Darby Creek Trail. The up corner in the upper right, you see that little wood post sticking up? That is the trail counter. It detects blobs of heat. of a certain size and up at least a certain height. And if a blob of heat goes by, that's a pedestrian. It has a metal detector in the trail, kind of like the ones that let you out of bank parking lots where the gate goes up. If it detects a blob of heat and metal, it thinks you're a bicyclist. It's that simple. So the terms are a little vague, but you understand what they are. If you look at the chart, you'll see an annual trend where it tends to peak in the summer, go down in the winter. The red is bicyclists and the blue is pedestrians. And sometimes it goes down a bit in the heat of the summer at the top of the peak because it's a really hot month. It depends on rain, it depends on snow, it depends on a lot of things. Then we have a gap. The counter was broken and I was gnashing my teeth because COVID-19 had hit with the shutdown. And if you look at the pattern to the right of that gap, you'll see that we no longer have a cyclical pattern over the year. It has more than doubled. The average trail usage per day has more than doubled with COVID-19. Everybody wanted to get out of their house in some safe way. This was the way to do it. And luckily we had our website there to tell them where trails were. Okay, let's talk about pedestrians. Next slide. There are several kinds. On unpaved trails, it's walkers and runners, but also dog walkers, cross-country skiers, snowshoe users, and more. Most trails are gone to dusk in usage, and they're not plowed if it snows. And actually, people with cross-country skis and even snowshoers we've had appreciate that and get out there and use the trail in the winter. The chance to try that stuff out without having to go somewhere else. On paved trails, we have all of those, plus stroller pushers. I did not count them as a target market, but especially women with a young kid in a stroller. It gets out of the house, the kid falls asleep along the Darby Creek Trail, and mom has a great walk. It's wonderful. Youngsters pushing their own strollers or riding in them. Toddlers toddling, kids on scooters, little two-wheel scooters, rollerbladers, skateboarders. We've really had them all. And they all seem to get along. On bicyclists, the next slide. This is a funny study that came out of Portland, which is a bicycling mecca for bike transportation planners. And I think it started as a lunchroom or water cooler joke where they tried to define types of bicyclists. So the terms are kind of funny. The less than 1% on the left is bicyclists that are strong and fearless. And that's less than 1% of the population. Then there's a group that's enthused and confident. Together they make up less than 10%. And then there's a very large group that are interested but concerned. And maybe they bike and maybe they don't yet, but they'd really like to, but they've got their issues and they're not quite sure. And then there's a third of the people that say, me on a bike? Ha, never. Well, it turned out, these types turned out to be very accurate. And when they tried doing a survey to quantify it, people had no problem saying, oh, I'm definitely this, I'm definitely that. Me, no how. That's me. And these numbers have been duplicated in studies across the country. And for us, the target market is the top 3 groups in Haverford. We want to get the interested but concerned people out there. We're not designing it for people that, wear the bicycle riding kit and are already out there now. We want them on there too, but we really want to get people out that aren't out now. So for us, it's also a health and wellness thing. And as I noted at the bottom, that more recent studies in the US are finding that even people in the top 2 groups will accept a time and distance penalty in order to use a less stressful, dedicated facility rather than cycle on a major road. You can cycle up 252 now. There are people doing it. Got very wide shoulders farther up, but you're up against a very high speed amount of traffic. And you have to be confident in what you're doing and confident in the drivers around you in order to do that. That is the enthused and confident and the strong and fearless types, but they're out there. The next slide, what is your target cyclist type? It can be the family on the left, or it can be the guys on the right, or it can be both. So I ask you to think about that. Finally, a whole separate topic on the last slide, and that's permeable paving. We always get hit with questions about permeable paving. My co-chair is also the head of our environmental advisory committee for the township. Everybody wants to have permeable paving. And we looked into it and found some issues. And one is permeable paving will clog up and no longer be permeable. It's just a question of how long that takes. The people that sell permeable paving will advise the township to buy a riding machine that vacuums the trail. Several times a year, you have to get out there and vacuum the trail to clear up those pores that make it permeable. And they advise not putting the trail that's permeable under trees, because trees drop all kinds of stuff like leaves and blossoms and things that break down into very fine particles and clog that paving. And then you end up with material that is cheap, not as more expensive, far more expensive than regular paving, doesn't act permeably anymore, and probably doesn't last as long either. So that's a consideration. The second thing is some paving materials are rubbery. You've probably seen high school tracks that have that rubbery feel to them, and they incorporate recycled tires, basically shredded tires. And that can include metals and other contaminants that these tires have accumulated over the course of their driving lives. In the case of one of our big parks, they were talking about putting a permeable trail around the park, and it turned out that would have been the equivalent of 33,000 shredded tires put onto parks land that had never been developed or had any hazardous kind of activities on it throughout history. So that was a concern. So I leave you with that. I hope some of our experience maybe will help you in getting a jump on your work, and I'll take any questions you might have.
Rich, I have a question. Tell me a little bit more about the Civic Council, what your experience has been and what benefits can come from that.
The Civic Council was formed in about 1940, before World War II, I mean. I'm also in the Historical Society, so I know all this stuff. And it was formed to be a single voice for civic associations that were neighborhood-based or development-based. And over the years, it grew and grew. It's had different levels of activity. I used to go to every township commissioners meeting and have a position paper on any items that they thought affected their neighborhoods. But it serves as an umbrella. Most of the organizations under it are already their own 501c3 or nonprofit, but it will sponsor things. We have a tree tenders group in Haverford Township. We have the Friends of Haverford Trails. Its bylaws are set up to have things called task forces, and ours is a standing task force. And it also can have priority items that it will push for several years, 2 to 4 years, to get them off the ground. And it's quite a good organization. One of the big things it does is it puts out an email called the Informed Citizens newsletter. And when we signed up on the Trails group, we had access to put out notices of hikes and other things on that. And immediately we were reaching 5,000 or 6,000 households. Other townships seem to lack that. It's really hurting, for example, on Upper Darby to find a way to get the word out to people, because there's no comprehensive way. Even with all the social media now and the neighborhood, little neighbors sections and all that, they don't cover enough area. Our group luckily reaches the entire township. We have our own email group now, which is up to about 900. Yes?
Responsible for the website, which is a good website. Who pays for it?
I pay for it. It's $100 a year. I code it in raw HTML. It's the way I learned. It's totally inefficient, but that's how I do it. And Google My Maps has been a real asset in getting those things made visual so that people can see for themselves. Also, if you go to that map, any one of those maps, you can flip from the map view, the map background, to the satellite view and see actual photos, that show you the parking lot, whether it's dirt or whether it's paved, and exactly where you drive in. And you can do street view and see what it looks like where you should pull into a parking lot. Some of the parks in this Delaware County area have parking lots you wouldn't see normally because you drive right by them. And you have to know where they are to slow down and say, oops, there it is, go on in. We have some real gems of trails around that are just not publicized.
Work for the township. The website?
The website is my website. It's the Friends of Haverford Trails website. And I do my part for the Have Trail group. I do the Upper Darby part to support the Friends of Upper Darby Trails. We actually helped start them by finding interested people and getting them together so they could take on Upper Darby and deal with their own elected officials whom they knew. And we started the Marple Newtown one as well with Doug Humes. And that's been waiting, I think, for opportunities to do things. I think if there were an opportunity to go out there and clear a trail in the woods and put down sticks or wood chips, people would do it.
Any other questions?
That was my question. I wanted to ask how were you getting individuals involved to participate to help us in this journey as we develop more trails?
Sorry, you have to speak up for me.
You asked the beginning of the
I
question.
asked, say that again.
Just if you could repeat your question, please.
My question was, how did you gather the, I hear that you had a Friends of Marple Newtown, but how do we get more individuals to participate to help us with this new mission that we're trying to enact?
I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'll put it in the chat if someone can read it for me.
In the meantime, she's putting it in the chat. So
While she's doing that, why don't you, any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I was on the map earlier and I looked at the trails that you have. Some of those which are common space to Haverford Township.
Some of those are what?
That look like they weren't, look like they cut through, Bryn Mawr College, and different private land. How were you able to acquire an easement or approval to use that land for trails?
We simply identify trails that are already there. If you're talking about a bike route that went between college campuses, that was a plan that was fostered by, I helped Lower Marion with its comprehensive plan. And we did a very technical analysis, a multivariate regression analysis of what's called a bike level of service on certain roads in Lower Marion. And it was a project with senior math seminar students at Bryn Mawr College. And the kids at Bryn Mawr College were telling me they really wanted a way to get back and forth to Haverford. They share classes. Some of the students at Bryn Mawr College are housed in the Haverford College apartments and dorms. And they wanted a way to get back and forth, and they're looking at Lancaster Avenue. And I was going, no, you don't bicycle where you think about driving. It's a different way to look at the world in the map. So that came up with that route and suggested it to the Lower Marion Assistant Director of Planning as a way to connect 5 college campuses together. I think of it as a string of pearls. And I thought if the campuses could get together and agree on it, and a uniform trail logo sign could be put up to guide the way of the students, it would be a wonderful way to get from campus to campus. It's largely turned into something now. It's a citizen and township-led effort called the Mainline Greenway. And they basically took a lot of that information and have adapted it. And that goes from an arboretum in West Laurel Hill Cemetery to the arboretum at what is the old Haas estate, Stoneleigh. And it grew from there. A lot of it's just getting people to, when they bicycle, to look at the roads differently. If you look at our bicycling layer for Haverford, we now have a map that shows a system of bike-friendly roads that avoids the major roads. We do show major roads that have things like wide paved striped shoulders for people that want to use it. But we have defined local lanes through the neighborhoods. We have a kind of a grid in Haverford that you don't have here in Newtown. And people can go back through the neighborhoods and wind their way and get there just about as quick and not be near the speed limits and the high level of traffic. And we try to hit every park. We try to cross the major roads where there's a traffic light with a pedestrian signal and push buttons. So if somebody really can't wait and their bicycle's not being detected, they can lean over and push the button to get a traffic light in their favor and go across. So that's what we've done. Some of the trails that we have for walking are informal trails. One of the great sources for trails is kids. They know how to get around your township, and they can show you how they do it.
I would certainly recommend anybody in this group should go to the Trail Summit. I believe it's in February, Rich?
Yes,
Okay. There'll be presentations from all the townships, and anybody that is anybody in the trail area is going to be there. It's just a wonderful.
yes, and Delaware County now has a trails planner, and they're forming a trail alliance. I've been on the steering committee for that. And they're hoping one of the things they will do is take over that summit
Okay.
and make it a county function.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, let's, I just want to recognize Delia's question. It is, could you, I believe, share how you were able to get more people involved?
Basically, by getting some maps out there. So in effect, you have a trail map now for Newtown Township. You just have to publicize it. I'll point out that the map we did for Haverford Township, I expanded. Google Maps on its own, because they use algorithms, they use data sets, they don't really have a bunch of cartographers. And they throw all these layers together and hope it's pretty close. And people can report issues and they'll ask other Google people to review it. All trusted Google reviewers. Somebody turned down one of my parks and it turned out she was from Hawaii. How she knew about parks in Haverford, I have no idea. But I also went in and on our map, in our overlay, I've identified every park in Haverford Township. And it's shaded green and its name comes up. And now that map you see for Haverford Township is not only on the Hav Trail website, it's on Haverford Township's website. We did a similar thing for Upper Darby. They have bigger issues to fry right now, but their economic development organization has put the Upper Darby Parks and Trails map of we did on their economic development website. So the people moving into Upper Darby can see if there's a little park nearby or a little path that goes down to a trail. So it's really just getting the word out. And it may not be this organization's function because you are in fact, part of the township. And your job is to make recommendations to your county or your township supervisors.
Okay. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've given us a wealth of information here, so we just have to digest this information. I would like to see Newtown get as close to Haverford as we can because you guys are great.
You're on the way.
Okay. Yep, it's a start. Okay. Next, we're going to new business. First item of new business is discussion and potential action for sustainable Newtown Square coordination and documentation. Suzanne? Wolanin?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I sent an email earlier in the week with the directives that are, excuse me, associated with your umbrella, your expertise. I hope, does everyone have their copies with them? My goal here is it's going to be a wide-reaching project, but initially the steps toward our certification or level of certification with the sustainability PA is to get us measured by a level. There's bronze, gold, silver. Everything would fall into a category based on what we currently are doing and how many points are associated with it. So of these items that I sent you, I'm hoping there's things that are already being implemented. And if they are, they would be the easiest submission, and at least initially when we are submitting our entire project in phases. That would get us point value that we accumulate with all of the other sections on the entire spreadsheet, which is vast, to get us a starting point. With each submission would come one of the four responses that I also had sent to you, that it would be already implemented. If it is implemented, I just would need documentation, PDF pictures supporting that it is being implemented. Another response would be, it's in the process of being implemented, and I would just need a year. I don't need a specific date. The third option would be, it's under review, no date required for that, or no action at this time. What I would like to do is to have a volunteer to take one of let's see how many items you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 items. To just do some investigating, submit whether or not it is being implemented, how, what your thoughts are time-wise, or even if it's just not realistic at all. The goal is to have submissions to me by the end of October 29th. I would like to submit the first go-round for the program mid-November to see where we land status-wise. This is probably going to be a project that's going to go over years because some of these items are very large. So I don't know if you would like to go through the list right now. And the other thing I would ask is that when you submit your responses, either John, you as the chairman would get everything and submit it to me as one package. So I'm not getting a bunch of different emails. Or I don't know, Aaron, if you would like to do it, just so I have one representative from the committee sending me the information. And it doesn't have to be one person per item. It could be a collection of people. I know that the first one, addressing community health concerns, I had met with the EAC, and Sheila O'Sullivan-Feeney talked about the exercise programs that they are doing with the EAC. So some of these also are going to cross over multiple committees. So the more information that I have, the better off we are. Does anyone have any questions?
Is there anyone who would like to volunteer for this position?
Well, there's multiple items here. I don't know if you want to go through them one at a time and have a volunteer or volunteers for each one. Amy, I know you were asking me about.
Yeah, I just want to confirm, you're saying October 29th as in 10 days?
Yes,
Okay. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So
That's what-
If I can real quick, this first go round is just to see where we are today. We're not expecting, like, Suzanne mentioned, it's not like this is a one and done. This is, if we have things that we already meet, that's the goal, so that we can go ahead and record where we are today. The ultimate goal would be for the township to at least get to gold or even platinum. And that's what we think that's a couple year process, particularly with some of the stuff that we're just kind of getting started on. I look at a couple of these things and we haven't even, we talk about being walkable to school. We're probably one of the least walkable communities, for that kind of a thing. And so that's not going to happen overnight. That might be, as Suzanne mentioned, a couple of years down the road. So it really is looking at these and seeing if so not everything is going to be responded to by October 29th is what I just want to make sure everybody
Right.
understands. It's just that if there's low hanging fruit that we're already doing, we want to take advantage of that. But then we also want to keep it on the horizon that we're discussing it.
Yes.
If we haven't taken any steps to do anything, that would be no action, or we're thinking about a lot of things.
Well, I would say that, and I don't want to speak with Suzanne, but for an example, the one that I would think may be no action, I don't know that there's any on this one in particular that would be no action, but there were some things that came back, like having like a health kind of services. And that doesn't really fall under a township's responsibility. And so that would probably end up being a no action. these here, we probably could have some action on, or we're going to do it in the future. It's not something that we have anything right now, but we're going to work on it. We don't even have a date for it. Or something like, let's say, and I'll use, if I can, as an example, the program to promote safe walking to schools in place. I don't think that's something that's going to be done in 2021. I don't think that's something that's going to be done in 2022. But we might say by 2025, we want to have a program completely put in place for how we could at least create anybody that's within half a mile of a school would have the ability to walk to that school. And that would be the goal. And so right now we would say that's in the future. That's at least 2025 before we would get that implemented. But between now and then, there might be other things that we can work on right now.
Well, John, 21A, trails for walking, cycling, developed and maintained. So maybe they're not all developed and maintained, but you're definitely investigating that, especially in light of what we just heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So rather than just being developed or maintained, we're investigating, so we should respond. in
You
some
can
way to
trails
that.
for walking, Lissitor,
Yeah.
Goshen.
Yep.
Pictures of that. And then you can just say that and cycling, we have, George, where do we just put in the cycling on Troop Farm?
Yeah,
And-
sure. The route from, again, starting at Westchester Pike down Campus Boulevard, down Stony Brook Boulevard, down Troop Farm Road to 252.
So there's evidence of that.
Okay, so it's not necessarily things that this particular committee is doing, but they might have been done before by others.
Correct, but it would fall under your umbrella.
Okay,
So may I propose that maybe we can each take 2 tonight, and it might be that there is no action. It might be that they're under review. But we can get something to Suzanne by October 29th, but it is going to be a very preliminary first look
Right.
at what these sustainability descriptions are. And then, we will have to get together at a later meeting as a committee to discuss what information we've gotten in each of these sustainability areas, what we've answered. I mean, I really can't take on collating this information by October 29th. I can't do it myself right now. I would be happy to put in, if people provide me with information, put in our status. And then we can maybe address this in November. If anyone else can volunteer to do this within the next 10 days, I would happily take 2 of these and send you whatever information I can get. It's not something I can take on right now.
Yeah, I have to say, full disclosure, I'm going out of the country on Friday
Yeah.
and rushing to do that. So I wonder if it might be better to find out, is anyone who is here today, do they have time to work on this? Otherwise, my sense is it might be more to, again, given the newness of this group, based on the initial goals that we did to note at least under review, because I feel with the limited
Yeah.
meetings that we've had, sort of documenting Lissitor Trail, which I believe the township, would already have that information. I just don't know how it's
Okay.
feasible.
yeah, I have a fair amount of background information now, so I'll certainly want to be
Yeah.
involved in that.
Mhm.
I also want to point out that we do have a proposed township sustainability initiative subcommittee. So I think whoever volunteers, we could put under that. And
That's great.
I'll be glad to take the lead here. If somebody after the meeting could let me know who wants to get involved, then we can get moving.
And I think, John, you're going to have background on a few of these
Yes.
items, so that would be great to
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. Are you looking for any official action from us now, Suzanne, or just? what we're
Just
talking about?
what you know that would be relative to these items, if you could get that information to me.
All right.
And I also on the email sent you a very easy submission form that it ties to the exact item number, what your supporting evidence is, if you're sending the PDF or pictures,
Okay,
okay?
so anybody that's interested, they could send me an email after the meeting, getting on board. and then
Okay.
We'll go from there.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, next under new business is discuss and consider approving the establishment of subcommittees. And what I've come up with is this outline. We established committees based on each of your responses to what your skill levels are and what projects you might be interested in. And we've taken the liberty of adding people to different groups here. And I'd like you to review that and let me know if that's satisfactory. What we want to, I think, get done today would be to review and approve the organizational chart without the people in it and see whether these particular groups are satisfactory or whether anybody has any suggested changes to it. So I'd like to open things up for board comment. Did we make any changes in what we've got there in just the organizational chart?
One change, just for purposes of public information, these are going to be published. I would change the committee names to subcommittees so that they know that they are under the Trails Committee.
Yep. Good comment.
And John, in the packet, the full meeting packet, can you tell me the page just so that we can view it? I can view it from my, what page number is this?
38.
38, thanks.
And on the long-term project subcommittee, that's going to be a work in process. And we're, as things come up, that'll be added to it. But some things we're going to want to investigate now. So we see what the roadblocks might be and see if we can address them as we go forward. Any other comments on the chart?
Sorry, and that would be fine, yeah, since I've started familiarizing myself.
Okay, if there's no more comments, could we get a motion approving the Trails Committee organizational chart?
Motion to approve.
Second? Okay, motion made by Member McCarthy, second by Secretary Cook.
That's reversed.
Okay.
Yep,
All right.
I have it. The
I
motion
will
was
make it a
made.
mission. I have a bad ear and I can't tell direction. So that's
I have
where
it
my
correctly
problem
in the minutes.
develops. Okay.
If I
excellent.
can, I just want to clarify for the record, you're really only acting on page 38. Is that
That
correct?
is correct.
Because if you're going to
We're
act
not
on the
going
other
to
page.
be getting into the people who are populating them.
Yep. Because I just wanted to make note that some of those would, at the level that they are now. would
Exactly.
Actually require advertising anytime they met. So we want to
I'll
get
be-
under.
I'll be addressing that
Okay, thank you.
once we get the approval. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it, motion carried. Now to the second aspect of this. We have tried to fill the names in that are, have stated that they're more suited to these things. I would like to have a maximum of 3 in each subcommittee. The reason is that 5 is, of course, a major problem, but if there's 4 and say myself or vice chair or somebody wants to sit in, you're violating the Subject Act. So what I would like folks to do between now and the next meeting is maybe reorient yourself to something, to an area that from one is overstaffed to one that might be understaffed. And just maybe if you could email me that. It turns out that the number of overstaffed equals the number of understaffed, so everybody's going to get the same opportunities as before. We just need to reorient that. And if we get that together by the next meeting, we could prove everybody is in the position. Now, between now and next meeting, I believe that certain of these groups should have some activity. It would include the state trail signage and access, the official map, the Lister Meadow Trail, outreach to neighboring townships, volunteer groups, nature walks, field trips, environmental ed, and budgeting. So I just wanted to alert folks to that. I'll be in touch with each of these groups, and maybe we can move forward on certain aspects and certain projects. Is there any other board comment on this particular issue?
Yeah, I got one question. Steve, what's the end date for budget for 22 fiscal year?
For sure, we have to have everything in. Yeah, I would say we would need everything by November 3rd at the very latest.
November 3rd?
November 3rd?
Yeah, if you're wanting dollars for 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would need that. And that would be anything beyond what George has already kind of put in for trail maintenance. And George has already done that. So like, I'm not worried. I don't want you to be worried about what it's going to take to maintain the existing trails that we have today. But if there's something that you want for going forward, that would be the area that we would need to talk about.
And we should fill those out on the forms that you have available.
Yeah, and that would be the absolute latest date.
Okay.
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 Is there precedent? So was there any in last year's budget prior to this committee? Was there any appropriations?
George, I don't remember how much you had in for kind of trail maintenance. But
Sure, and the trails in our maintenance right now come under the park system. And I want to say it's maybe $4,000 dedicated to trails, but then throughout the parks budget, of which trails are part of it presently, there is some money for signage. Sometimes there's other monies for stone and those kind of things when we need materials. There's a little bit of money for outside contract work. So there's some things dedicated specifically to trails and some money's dedicated to the park system as a whole, of which the trails are part of it.
Will that be transferred over to our group or shared, or how would that work?
I think long-term, I think for 2020, it's going to be a shared until we get a better picture of what, or 2022, going backwards. After 2020, we don't want to repeat it, I don't think. But anyway, so for 2022, I think it's going to be a part of under where it is right now. We are in the process of actually talking about changing entirely how we budget. And so we're looking at moving more to program budgeting. And when we do that, my guess is that you would have a very specific area that really talks about just trails, maybe even down to the spot of saying which trails we're going to spend what monies on. And so I don't know that we'll get quite that detailed in the budget presentation document, but it will definitely be rolled up into what we're headed. But so I would think for 2020, in short answer, 2022, you're going to be a part of through the parks and what we already have dedicated. If there's a couple thousand more dollars that you're interested in, or something like that, we do have another project that we're going to talk about tonight that we potentially are going to need to add some more dollars to. We know what it's going to kind of cost to do the actual work, but there's also engineering and some things like that. And so we would work on our end, putting together what we think that'll take to make that connection happen. And I know that's further down on the agenda tonight.
If we want to come up with a few things on our own, how much detail are you looking for?
We need enough detail that we can present to the board, why we're looking at it. Just to be like totally transparent, we've had a really bad Friday and Monday when it comes to our budget. We went from what we thought was really manageable to almost being out of control. And so we're having to do some real hard work over the next week to get things into place before we can even present on Monday night to the board, kind of where we're headed. So let's just say I wouldn't come in with a big number of like $50,000 or $60,000 if that's what you're thinking. I think for the first year out, I don't want to say don't do it, but I think if you need that much money, we need to be ready to really justify where that's coming from.
Would you consider 5,000 unreasonable?
No, I think 5,000. Look, today, I think anything greater than 50 cents seems overwhelming, just because of what we've experienced over today and on Friday. But what I would tell you is, look, we think trails are important. So I don't want to not put money towards trails. And if we think they're important, they're part of our strategic plan. They're part of what we ought to be doing. We have to, if we're going to make something happen, we've got to start getting there. But what I guess I'm saying is, just if you have some good ideas, let's put them together. And if you can justify what you're asking for, but if you just came in saying, we just would like $50,000 for trails and you don't have a plan, I don't think the board's going to support that right now. But if you say you just would like $5,000 of seed money to help you plan out some things, I think we could probably do that. I do think, to be honest with you, when I mentioned the project that's further down, I think it's the one under, which one is it? The PennDOT Multimodal under 9.2. On that one, I honestly believe we're probably looking at asking the Township Board of Supervisors to consider kicking in somewhere between additional $50,000 and $100,000 to make that trail happen. So, I mean, it's not that we're not willing to spend money. I just want to make sure we're explaining why we're wanting to spend money on what.
Yeah. Okay. Next on the agenda, I'd like to announce a grants workshop. This is going to be put on by DCNR. It's going to be Thursday, November 4, between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. DCNR is going to be one of the major sources of grants. So I think if we understand what they need and in what form they need it, it will put us down the road quite a bit. So I would advise everybody here that feels that they may want to get involved in grants to attend.
Say November 4th or December 4th?
November 4.
9 to noon. Okay.
At 9 to noon.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's just exactly the perfect timing.
Great timing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next on the agenda, discuss and consider approving public trail walk event at the Lissitor Trail and Meadow Preserve for Saturday, November 13 at 1 p.m. Terry McCarthy.
Well, briefly, we talked in a small group about how to get this kicked off, to get people excited, and we picked the date of November 13th as a nice potential kickoff date, and Beth has volunteered for, had her arm twisted, to actually be the trail guide. We wrote a nice little article, which you can see there, up there, that's going to go into the Newtown Township newsletter. And if anyone wants a copy of it, happy to send it around. It's basically a little blurb. So what we're going to do is, there's additional parking at Newtown Square Presbyterian Church. They've agreed to offer their parking lot that day. They might even have some refreshments for people. Then you cross the street to the tavern, the 1742 Tavern is where we gather. Again, they're going to provide refreshments and tours of the tavern. You cross over to Lissitor. It's about 3.9 miles total to go up around Lissitor, do the entire meadow loop, and then come back. And so John is already connected with environments like the Running Place, and we're happy to do some bigger publicity, like our fearless leader here has just done a video for us, which is about 2 minutes of Steve talking about why he supports the Trails and Greenways, and welcome to this new walk. And hopefully we do one a month in the different trails, and that's the synopsis of what we've got cooking so far there. But the goal is also to get people to come to these meetings, right? So that's in the article. As long as you're all okay with this, I would like to put that article, when it's laid out nicely, doing and all, on the patch, on your Facebook page, hang some nice flyers, like, I don't know if anybody went to the Harvest Festival. They had over 600 people, and these were in all these different places around Newtown Square. Little flyers, welcome to this, and I'm going to videotape that. And good library of information for the township about our monthly walks going on. That's it.
There's another vehicle that we can help with, that is all the TV screens in the lobby here and upstairs. We can have that added to the loop.
Great.
So that's seen, and this is an excellent example of sustainability. To submit the flyer alone, the article here, it's demonstrating that, you know, we're active in that arena. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can get Garrett Williamson to put up a little poster or two, and the library would be great. And, you know, any place that you think, oh, the schools, Boy Scouts, you're involved in so many environments in Haverford. Would you like a little flag?
Instead of multiple.
Very efficient.
And I would just walk the walk here, so. Advertising. It'll be posted though, the QR code.
I don't know how to do that, but I'm happy.
Township's more than willing to help you. Anything that you're doing. Really encouraging. Using more. speed where we got it down to a science. We'll help you in with it.
So is approval to go forward?
Yes, I was going to bring that up. Any other board discussion?
I just have a question. Is there a website on there?
No.
No, okay,
Oh,
so,
wait, yes. Well, there's no data about us on the website, but I did load the website, Newtown Township, Delaware County, Facebook, and the newtowntownship.org website. So they're on that article, but I don't know how that works.
okay, so I think we need to decide as a committee, if we're gonna do even, based on what Haverford Township is doing, are we going to have a website where we maintain it on our own and we can put all this information out there and we can start sharing information to a website? Or are we going to put all of this information on the Newtown
So I'm going to
Township.org?
answer that question for you. We'll save you a lot of time. We're actually going to discuss that under the
Okay.
social media policy.
Okay,
The township, the board of supervisors has basically said we have one website
Okay.
for all the community, for the entire township.
okay,
And so we'll create pages within our township website
okay,
for you, and you can come up with all of what you want on there. We'll set up the links. We'll do all that. We'll put links out, but we're going to have, as a township, we're going to have one Facebook page, or whatever the different platforms are, we'll have one, not a bunch of different ones,
Got it.
because what we want to make sure is the message. There's two things that we know. The Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and everything else that I don't know, all have algorithms that if you post, there's a certain way it gets out and more people get to see it. And so what we want to do is build the following so that people who follow the township website page see everything that's happening and see all of that information that's going out. And so, or I said website, but I meant Facebook and those. So we want to do that. And then the second thing is the board wants to make sure that we're consistent in how we put information out, that we're consistently branded as we put information out and all of those kind of things. So we'll create we have already done so, like with the EAC, we've done so with the parks. We'll do so with you. We'll create a page, put any information up there that you want. You just let us know what information that you want. We will go ahead, get some starter stuff that we put up, just that you exist, how you were brought into being, that, the resolution that the board passed to create this committee, and do those kind of things. And then anything that you want to put up there, we can
Great.
put up there.
so
for
we
you.
need to get content to Steve on this, so they can
They
create a
have
web
it
page
so far.
on the Newtown Township.org
Right.
website.
Yep.
Okay.
So on the website, you already have a page. What I think would suggest is that you add a calendar,
Right,
and all these different events, these trail events, they'll see the calendar, and if it's dark, they click on that, they know there's an event, and then it will just open up to everything about the event.
yeah.
So as soon as you go on the page, you'll be able to see the calendar there. It's a starter page at this point, but
Got
you
it.
have one started.
And I have that in here, that we need the calendar, so we can start with this one on the Meadow Preserve, and then we can add more to the calendar as we set the date.
And the videos, like the one I just took, these are going to be 2-minute videos. With anybody here who wants to do them, Steve, just the kickoff that says we're going to do this. So I'm guessing that goes on this webpage as well as your YouTube channel or wherever you're going to pop it.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, cool.
It will be a very hard act to follow. I warn you.
I wouldn't say that.
I made him sit down. I'm not going to go like this.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the public trail?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Oh,
Okay.
by the way, the photos are by Beth. So when we load them anywhere for copyright.
A motion by Secretary Cook, second by Member McCarthy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Right, next on the agenda is discussion of committee projects. I've pretty well gone over the committees that we may want to involve over the next month. Is there anyone that would like to open discussion on any particular project? Hearing none, let's move on to the next one. Discussion and possible action regarding the cancellation of the December 21, 2012 Trails and Greenways Committee meeting. Mr. Neese.
Yeah, so I know that actually at the last meeting, we actually, I think, talked about making sure we were going to have a December meeting. This room is going to, on that day, is probably going to be full of library books because we're emptying out the library to carpet the library. So if this committee is willing, what we would rather see you do is maybe use that time and let your subcommittees meet in the month of December. And then we would pick back up in January. If you really feel strongly about meeting, we will try to find an offsite location. The biggest challenge is I have to find an offsite location that can that has video, because that's how we are able to broadcast the meeting for the public to see. So that's a little bit of our concern. And the school district happens to have meetings on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and that would be our first choice. So that was really the reason why we are asking that you consider not having your December meeting. I know you, by that point, you would really have your subcommittees potentially up and operating. You could all have do your subcommittee meetings and give yourselves a break for this meeting and then be really ready to go in January. Your January meeting, I would say, I was mentioning to John that you actually have a reorg as part of the start of that meeting. You may decide to still appoint the same people just to get started, because you've only been meeting for a short period of time. I don't think anybody goes off this year. Is that correct? Trying to remember. I
think it's 2 years.
I think we started everybody with a 2-year term. And so, or a 1.5-year term. So I think the committee stays the same, but it is under second-class township code that we have to reorg all of our committees. And so we will be doing that. But that takes about 5 minutes, and then the rest of the meeting would be normal.
Any board discussion?
I agree.
Okay. All right. Could we have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
I second Delia Archer.
Okay, thank you. Motion made by Secretary Cook, second by,
Delia Archer.
okay, thank you. I didn't hear that direction at all.
That's okay.
Okay,
So the motion is to cancel the December full committee meeting and that subcommittees will meet in December.
all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Next on the agenda is discussion and direction for the township social media policy. Mr. Dees.
I think I kind of covered it just a few minutes ago when we talked about the website. The board at the prior meeting, and I think in your packet, we actually put the social media policy itself. What we'll get for you is the resolution from the board that actually stated that it wants, a single source going out from the township. And so we'll get that resolution to you.
Thank you. We now move to old business. First item is updated information on the Delaware County Open Space Grant. Is that Mr. Sharretts?
So I'll report that it is our understanding that our feasibility study request was in the group of projects that Delaware County Council has approved. However, we have not received official word yet from the county about that. So as a result, I don't want to report that it's absolutely definite and that we would start moving in any direction we're very heartened that it sounds like ours was in the group that was approved, but we don't have that paperwork in front of us. So I'll kind of leave it at that bit of an update if I can.
Yeah, I thought I read in the paper that there was an announcement that they approved certain projects, but they didn't get into any detail. Oh,
Yeah, it was on their agenda of the projects that were, that were in the group that were approved. Not all the projects that were presented to them were approved.
Mhm.
Ours, we believe, was in that group, but again, because we don't have final word and confirmation, I don't want to take it further than that.
that's certainly encouraging news.
It is encouraging and heartening to know that it sounds like we'll be able to do something there.
And I would say, I hope your meeting in November, we would have clear direction of whether or not we got it. And at that point, I would probably have it on your agenda for you to recommend to the board that we go out for an RFP for the consultant for that project. And so, and we could take that act and then we could start that process so that hopefully in the January timeframe, we would be ready to appoint a consultant. And so we have some RFPs that we've done that are very similar to this. So I think that we could put one together pretty quickly and be ready to go.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, discussion and potential action concerning the PennDOT multimodal grant. Amy Blegriff and Beth Junjisha.
Thank you. A small subcommittee we met on Wednesday and actually met again on Friday of this week. Our initial meeting was with George, Stephen, Beth, John, and I, and we met at the Drexel Lodge Park just to get an overview of the grant as proposed. What I want to do is just set the stage a little bit for what is this money that the township has received. And we're going to be getting a lot more into the actual grant writing and what grants do we want to go after. But what I thought was particularly informative as we spoke to the township staff was that this is, again, a multimodal transportation fund grant. So I say that just as emphasis because this particular money, PennDOT actually has a great website. One of them being Take a Walk. So if you Google sort of PennDOT Take a Walk, you'll start to see some of the different resources that they have available. But first of all, I should say that the proposal that the township submitted was to be used for the implementation of new trails, sidewalks, and pedestrian crossings in the middle of Newtown Township for the purposes to develop a connected multimodal trail loop and improve pedestrian safety. And again, given what I've since read on the PennDOT site, keywords like pedestrian safety and all are things that we should pay attention to as we receive funds like this. In other words, if we're looking to prioritize goals, then pedestrian safety in terms of a PennDOT grant would move up on our list there. So I thought also a little bit of my background with the AIA, but I think it's important for us to understand the term multimodal as used here. You can Google all sorts of things about it, but in this context, multimodal refers to ultimately access to public transportation. So the idea that you could walk to a bus stop to get down to the city, or you could walk to a bus stop to take the train to get down. But multimodal is that idea of that connectivity, starting with the walking and the health portion, and related to the sustainability plan, the idea of reducing congestion and the environmental impact of the ways that we bring people together and invite them to enjoy our communities. So those are just some key terms I wanted to present as Beth's going to get into some of the details. The grant proposal is for 2021, 2022 improvements, and thus the sense of urgency on the part of the township for us to make a recommendation for the actual use of these funds. PennDOT appears to do these, I don't know if it's always annually, but our first goal is to earmark this money that we've received so that we would be positioned to go back and say, hey, look what we've done. And we would like to get more to continue the work that we're doing there. So 650,000 of a $2.2 million total proposal was awarded. Some of the key things, all PennDOT grants require ADA compliance because the whole idea is to allow accessibility for people at all age levels and skill levels and mobility accommodations, et cetera. So sidewalks, multi-use paths, benches, shelters could all fit into a grant such as the one that we've been awarded. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Beth. And I just want to thank the township. Stephen and George really gave us a really good overview, not only of this specific grant, but just to help us start to understand this process of what grants do we go after, and the fact that certain money is focused on certain things. There's also buckets of money for things like parks and specific to trails. So that sort of Chinese menu, that menu that we put together as we look to go after funds is going to be very important. So Beth, you've done the lion's share.
Sorry. So I do have a big map of all the trail proposals. If that would be helpful, I can kind of show you where things are going. I'm sorry I didn't get a slide up. I didn't have time. Is that kosher if we set it up on a table real fast and so everyone can kind of look over? Okay.
Can you just repeat, Amy, when was the meeting and who was there?
It was Wednesday.
Hold it up. We can do that too.
I'm a really good easel.
Okay.
Okay, so the trail or the multimodal grant is basically where the area either getting fancy now, either going through Drexel Lodge Park or coming down Ellis Avenue or Ellis Drive. Sorry. So the first option they showed us was actually coming through Drexel Lodge Park, coming off of Campus Boulevard. And there's quite a slope there, and it would be going through a potential sewer easement location already. It would skirt the ponds that are in Drexel Lodge Park and then come over to where the soccer field is, skirt the soccer field, kind of move north to just beyond or behind the houses right here, and then skirt the north edge of the driving range that's back there, and eventually pop up onto Route 3 over by like the dealership, the car dealership over by CVS and Uno's and that type of thing. So that was option one. So there's some pluses and minuses with option one. I mean, because we are a trail committee, our first instinct was like, yes, trails, nature, awesome. The problem is $650,000 isn't going to get us all the way there. It may only get us access from Campus Boulevard down into the park, and that's possibly it because of the steep slope, because of the ADA requirements. There's also a homeowner that, or a property owner that we will have to deal with to get an easement through that property. So there's some negotiations there. As the trail continues, we would also have to negotiate with the owner of the driving range. So there's two potential easements that we would need for that location. And, you know, as we were told earlier, you know, we don't want to disregard this option because it's something we want. It's just there's a couple steps to it. So this amount of money won't get us all the way there. Another thing to kind of keep in mind, Greer Park just had the master plan redone for the park. There's potential for a master plan being redone for Drexel Lodge. And there are a couple dams there, and dams are very expensive to maintain. So that master plan at some point may say, hey, we would like to remove those dams, which would remove the ponds that the trail would be skirting and restore the native stream bed. So now it becomes, would we want to move the trail so it's closer to the stream bed? So it becomes kind of a you know, what's going to happen in the future to that park? Do we want to spend the money now or do we want to wait a little bit? The other option would be putting the sidewalk down Ellis Avenue. There's already a plan in place to connect from the Chesterbrook Academy over to Uno's, basically with a sidewalk. So now you'll have a sidewalk going down Ellis and then cutting over there. The cool thing with the Ellis option is that the roadbed, we've been told, is wide enough to accommodate a sidewalk, so we don't need to get any easements. So it will be, they'll narrow the lanes a little bit on Ellis Avenue, which will also help slow traffic down, which has been an issue there. So we get a sidewalk out of it, we get to slow traffic, which is kind of a bonus thing because that's been an issue. And it's now going to give access for everyone that lives in that neighborhood down to the sidewalk along Westchester Pike, which then they could take all the way to Dunwoody, but they could also potentially cross the street to the Ellis Preserve, get to the Lister Trail, and then get to the Newtown Meadows Preserve. So now we've just connected a big area of trail all the way up to the township building. So kind of with those options in mind, the three of us are recommending going with the Ellis Avenue option to start with. The other, we definitely still want to do the Drexel Lodge nature trail type option. One thing to kind of keep in mind too, when we were talking about different grants, this grant is geared towards multimodal. So the sidewalk fits in there perfectly, and there's less grants available for sidewalk type projects. There are more grants available for more nature trail type projects. So further down the line, there may be more opportunities to do something through Drexel Lodge than there would be to do something along Ellis Avenue. So we are recommending to you guys that we go the Ellis Avenue option, which actually would be about the amount that we got the grant for. I believe you said about $300 per foot, and it was about 2,100 feet. So that would put us at about $630,000, and then there would be some additional engineering costs that would go along with that. So that would basically take up our money, and that would be what we're looking at. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you for being my easel.
I think that was an absolutely wonderful presentation from both of you. You've done a lot of good work in a short period of time, and you should be very proud of that. Also, similarly, I'd like to shout out Terry for the job she did, and it gets our particular group off to an excellent start. Do I have a motion to approve option 2 of the Ellis Avenue?
I move to approve that brilliant.
So I just want to make sure that we're clear that we're actually making a recommendation.
Yes, that's right. I was just going to say, yeah.
So I just want to make sure everybody understands what we're moving and voting on. We will actually put it on the agenda. We're making this recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, and we will put it on the agenda for whatever next Monday is. I think it's is it the 25th? Yeah, it's the 25th. So we'll put it on their agenda for their approval, and then George and I will work with PennDOT to get the grant shrunk down in scope so that we can do this and then start moving. I'll actually ask the board to give us authority to get the engineer rolling and get the whole process going, because we would need to get this out to bid early next year so that we could get it done and closed out by the end of the year.
Where is the documentation on option 2 of this Ellis Avenue?
It's part of the original grant submittal. We're just going to take that grant submittal and just ask them to narrow down the part of the project to that area. There's not a match on this one. So this helps us to narrow that down and do that. And I can share with them that we also do have there's a second project that's going on, the widening of Route 3. That is actually to be done in 2022 as well. And so if you're familiar with where the Goddard School is at the corner down here, from the Goddard School to basically where Uno's Pizza is, there's no sidewalk. And so, but part of the widening for Route 3, Equus has agreed to make that part of their project. They're going to put the sidewalk in on that side of the road, even though it's kind of an off-site improvement. It's because they're on the other side of the road, but they're giving us that sidewalk as part of the deal and working with PennDOT and doing that. So by actually having both pieces of that sidewalk done, they're going to do the ADA ramps at Goddard School as well as at on the other side of the corner there, which is actually a residential house and that. We now open up a really great opportunity for a piece of connection from CVS all the way back to the township building. You'll actually have sidewalk all the way around that way, which also means that a fair amount of folks back here who can pick up the sidewalk that goes up along Bishop Hollow will be able to do that. And so it's a real big win, I think, for connecting areas. And we continue to work with that. And like Beth and Amy said, we're really excited about the other trail as well. It's just that this seems to make the most sense with where the funding's coming.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Member McCarthy, second by Member Cook. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, motion carried.
Question about that map. That is so neat. And is that our valid map now for all of the proposed trails?
It comes right out of the document.
Oh,
We do
okay.
leave it so everyone, it's nifty to have kind of a visual to have.
That's a great PR piece.
Hmm.
We have 10 of those. We put them everywhere, right?
Well, I mean, it's a part of our Trails and Greenways master plan.
Right.
So it's, it's already in some places we've put it out. Yeah, it's very easy for us to take out and do it.
And we had been thinking it would be great if we had it sort of whiteboarded so we could write on it, and put on,
Like
somewhere
laminate.
as a tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, if that's ever possible, just because, so many people are visual to be able to.
We could put it in the lobby right there as people go to the library or come in.
Is there any additional business? Hearing none, is there any board comment?
I just want to say thanks again for the expertise of our township. I mean, I really was just so impressed, and I felt so privileged to be able to meet with the both of you and to to start to learn just more, again, not just about what's all in our heart that we want to do, but just how we're going to have to work to connect the dots on the maps and to connect the people, as was so well shared here today, because that's what it's all about. Yeah. We're creating a village.
I would echo your comments that learning lessons learned, best practices from neighboring townships, and the incredible wealth of knowledge we have with our township members who have already done so much work. I think we're better positioned to hit the ground running.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we made an excellent start in a short period of time. I'm excited. Really am. Any public comment? Okay, any items for the next agenda?
Did we propose to schedule walks monthly? Even, so we have one in November. We're not having a meeting in December. Or should I just send an email out and everybody can vote on it? That'd be.
Well,
No, can't do
you
that.
can't do
right.
that. So
Right.
if you want to take an action like that, we need to put it on the agenda, take the action.
Okay.
And I'm happy for you to do that, but please don't send out emails and take votes.
Okay.
That's a big thing against the Sunshine Act. So we don't want to do anything that would get you guys in trouble.
Why don't you propose a calendar like seasonally? Maybe we have one for November. It looks like December might be busy for everybody, and then maybe we could start thinking about monthly, starting up again in spring for walks. And by then we'll have the calendar ready, the website ready, And we can start thinking about monthly walks starting up again after this one in November. We can start up again in the spring. It's just start gathering information over emails and start getting information on the website, but maybe we can.
Kind of
look at
get
a
through the
calendar.
first one or two. And then
Yeah, let's get
work
through
on
the
a
one in
calendar.
November. Yep.
And
then
maybe
start
think of other locations where we can have the walk,
For
some
the
of our
spring.
parks, and there are really more opportunities in this township already than we think are there.
So I do have one question. The proposed budget that we have that's due, or at least to submit it to you by the 3rd, does that require a board motion?
Typically, I would want an action from you, but
Yeah.
if your subcommittee brings that back to us,
Okay,
we'll just go ahead and get it part of the action
understood.
for that. And I'm telling you, I'm pushing that out as absolutely as far as I can to give you time. If you have it before Monday night, that would be awesome, because we're presenting expenses Monday night, but we're not presenting the full budget until the 8th. So I'm giving, if you get it to me by the 3rd, we can at least get it into the document, and I can at least share with them where we are.
No, that's
I placed in the chat that I think we should perhaps propose a small amount just for seed money tonight. So we can have something for 2022. Sorry.
again, that's notwithstanding any appropriations from grants.
Yeah, right. We have the money from the grant. I think that we're gonna have to add money to the grant. I suspect the $300 that was quoted per foot is probably a little low, because it was actually quoted prior to 2020 or 21. If you know anything about construction costs, they've literally just skyrocketed over the last year, to the point that, even just putting concrete down is like ridiculously more expensive. But we do think it's an important project, and we would want to get it out, get it bid, and hopefully the township's prepared to, stand behind it and make whatever additional areas we could make it.
Okay, I have a few people in mind as speakers. I would like to get Tim Denny, who's the Director of Parks and Rec at Haverford, which is the other side of the coin from what Rich presented. This would be the township viewpoint. Also, I'd like to bring in Doug Humes, Friends of Marshall Newtown Trails, Ken Taylor, The Running Place, maybe both of those at one and Tim Denny at another. So these are some of the things that I'm thinking about. Any other suggestions for speakers would be welcome. Okay. I think that brings us to the end. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion by Secretary Cook. Second by Member Dungisha. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried. We're adjourned. I think we had a good meeting. Thank you.